What's going on, everyone? I am back. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight. Let me know if you can hear me down on your end. Let me know how the audio is. I always need to check because I don't actually have anyone to check for me. So let me know if you can hear me. But it was a really big week. I didn't get any videos done this week, mostly because I've been so busy with my own work. So for the last 3 or 4 days, I had my own personal work to do. So I've been doing that, and then I didn't have any time to do videos. I've got a couple of video ideas, but they're going to take a little bit longer. And then also there wasn't really any news anyway, so that kind of worked out in my favor. So, but we've got a few news articles to cover today. So we're going to talk about Cyberpunk 2077. The 1.2 patch just dropped. I'm not sure when it did, maybe a couple of days ago, because Digital Foundry has already done their article on it. So we're just going to go over that and then talk about some of the differences between the old patch and the new patch. And all I've really done is just read the article and watched their Digital Foundry video. So I haven't actually played it, but we can talk about it. We can have a look at the video together, and I'll give you my thoughts on the PC version anyway, because that's the only one I've played. But it will be on the old patch, and I'll be talking about all the old problems on it, I guess. Now, there's also Sony on Game Pass, there's Mass Effect, and there's also Threadripper dates. So a few things to talk about. And why don't we jump in straight away? And actually, I've got an article about Intel first up, which just dropped like about 5 minutes ago. So let me organize the screens first and then bring this up. So let me pull this over here, and this literally dropped 5 minutes ago. So I figured, okay, well, why not talk about something hot and fresh? And I don't know if this is legit or not, but I trust Luke Plunkett. Actually, he's an Australian, so give him double the trust. But I don't believe this is just something that Intel did for April Fool's Day. I really think they actually did something ridiculous like this. So basically, the article is about Intel, and they want to use this AI. They want to use the AI in their CPUs, and they wanted to get to react to basically any of the offensive language and offensive racism that we get, I guess, over live streams and also Twitch in gameplay, things like that. So essentially, let me just read the first part of the article. Intel gave a presentation at GDC a few weeks back, but I'm guessing nobody actually watched it because it took until this week for anyone to notice this absolutely absurd pitch from the company, which wants to use AI to monitor and censor hate speech in your online voice chat and let users toggle just how much hate they want to hear. So I'm not really I don't actually live stream on gameplay that much, like Twitch and that sort of thing. I do want to actually, but I just haven't had any time to do it. But maybe you guys are more familiar with that area and watching other people's gameplay. I actually don't know who thought of this bright idea, because I mean, even for somebody like me who doesn't watch that much, like, it's almost as if people can select if they want to hear the N-word. Like, what kind of thinking is that? It's like some people can hear the N-word, and if you're happy with the N-word, yeah, you should actually, yeah, it's okay for you to go and hear the N-word. So they're going about this in the completely wrong way. It's almost like they're just, yeah, allowing a certain portion of the audience to hear the N-word or other types of name calling. And as you can hear, as you can see in the sliders here, it's got none, some, most, all of the name calling. And what defines name calling anyway? Like, I could be super aggressive and say really nice words, but is that really name calling? Like, or I could just casually mention like the C word and then it's going to, I guess, censor it. But I feel like, I mean, just off the top of my head, I feel like this doesn't make any sense and it's probably a bad idea all around. And not to mention like the fact that they can use AI to actually monitor this and pick it up. Of course, they're going to catalog this in the background. Of course, they're going to take this for data. And of course, at some point or other, they'll probably use it against you. So a lot of this really doesn't make sense. And there's more, like they did a live show. I feel like this is legit. So look at this: ableism and body shaming, aggression, LGBTQ plus hate, misogyny, name calling. I don't know who came up with this. Is like embarrassing. Swearing, white nationalism. We all need to grow up as a people, and this is just a weird way to go about it. Vincent says, Intel doesn't know what to do after releasing the crap CPU ever again. No, they don't. Absolutely right. They've lost the plot. They've lost the plot for the last 3 or 4 years. And we had a lot of, I guess, fans covering it up because after Skylake, for them to release it like, 4 or 5 times over, the same CPU basically. Like I'm using a Comet Lake. And I feel like there's a marginal difference between the 4690K in terms of single thread performance. Like, yes, the clock speed has gone up. Like it used to be 4.5 gigahertz on my 4690K. I overclocked it. And now it's like 5 gigahertz. And there's some IPC improvement between Skylake and Haswell, but it's just, it's like I've upgraded. It's the upgrade period of like 1 or 2 years versus like 5 years since I've upgraded my CPU. So anyway, that's make sure you go and check that article out. I haven't completely looked into it. I just got it on my Twitter, and I haven't done a check on it, but it seems legit. Another thing that came up this morning in my Twitter was this article from Jeff Grubb, and he writes for VentureBeat, and he says that Abandoned for PS5 is not a secret Hideo Kojima game, and Abandoned was announced, I believe, a couple of days ago. I'm having a hard time scrolling now. And as you can see here, this is Phil Spencer, and I believe the figure next to that Xbox sign is the guy from Death Stranding, I believe. But essentially, Kojima Productions is making a new game, but it is not Abandoned for PlayStation 5. Earlier today, Sony Interactive Entertainment revealed a trailer for Abandoned, which is a horror project from developer Blue Box Games. But that trailer and the developer's spotty history, it's just odd enough to cause some people to speculate that Abandoned is secretly the next game from Metal Gear Solid creator Hideo Kojima. That is not the case. So, as you guys remember, Hideo Kojima and I forgot the director, but he did Pacific Rim, and they made PT a while ago, which was kind of like the successor to Silent Hill. I believe at one time it was called Silent Hills as a trailer, but then when they released the demo for everybody to play over PS4, that was called PT. And it was like an hour demo where you walk through this abandoned house, and it was really creepy and all that. It was very Silent Hill-esque. And it looks like, whatever PS5 is saying, whatever VentureBeat is saying, he's saying that Abandoned is on PS5, but it's not Kojima, because Kojima apparently is working with Xbox on his next game. So that is why I don't know if Jeff Grubb just picked it all up from this live stream or video from Phil Spencer, But essentially he's saying that Kojima is not on Abandoned, and Kojima's next game will be on Microsoft's platform, which isn't surprising given how badly Microsoft seems to be courting these Japanese developers at the moment. They want to get a lot of Japanese games on their Xbox store. They see that as an area that they could grow. I mean, essentially it was on 0% anyway. So especially with Sony exiting that market at the moment, Sony has been pulling a lot of their developers out of Japan. Well, not so much pull them out, but like there's been less work for Japanese developers. And a lot of the things that they've actually been doing are just localization things or smaller type of projects. So they haven't really had those big games like, say, a Gran Turismo that they used to have back in the PS3 days and PS2 days. So I see Microsoft trying to enter that market because essentially they're trying to grow from 0%, and everything that they get is a bonus. And so Phil Spencer, yeah, I think it's very likely that Kojima is probably working on Microsoft because as an indie developer, you probably want to secure the funding any way that you can for a project. So that's what they did with Death Stranding. They had help from Sony, and as you recall, like they had a collaboration with Sony for Death Stranding, and Mark Cerny and all of that, you know, did a lot of nice PR for them, which was part of the reason why it was really successful as well. Plus, it was a Kojima game, and now maybe they're trying to do the same thing over at Microsoft. And the other thing is with Kojima is like, if you're an indie developer, you want to keep good relationships with everybody. So you don't always just want to work with Sony. You want to be open to work with other publishers because then you can negotiate for the best possible package deal that you can get. But I guess those two things were just things that popped up this morning. The Intel thing, which isn't really a story, it's just something stupid that Intel has done yet again. And then we have this story about Microsoft and possibly Kojima working together. So Vincent says, the point is the price is still ridiculous. Yeah, 11,900K is really expensive. $600, I wouldn't pay that. Plus, it's so weird to me that the 11,700K is, I think, about 450 or 470, and then it's 0.3 gigahertz, the difference, and no one's really going to be able to tell the difference. So I have no idea why they decided to do it this way. It was almost like they were missing a product at the top end, and they couldn't make the i7 6 cores, 12 threads. They had to make it 8 cores, and then they couldn't do anything about the i9 essentially. So the i9 is a bit of a joke product at the moment, the i9 Rocket Lake. Vincent says, I see more people want a PS5 than an Xbox. Myself, just grab a PS5 and wait for Final Fantasy VII Remake and DLC PS5 version. Yeah, that's really interesting because we're going to talk about Sony on Game Pass in just a second. I think it's interesting. I'm hearing a lot of a groundswell of like a movement for Xbox and Game Pass. I've been on Game Pass for about 3 months. I know a lot of people talk about Game Pass, but it's almost like you don't really have to think about buying games anymore. And it's almost going the way of Netflix. Like, if you remember, like when Netflix came up, people are still buying Blu-rays and that. And then after people got used to the format, it was almost like, well, I don't have to buy any more Blu-rays. So it's almost like that sort of feeling. But let's get into the presentation part of this show. And by the way, I want to also mention, it'll be coming up to 1 year next week, I think. I think I started around the 12th of April. So next week's live stream will be a celebration, I guess. And I think it'll be fun. It'll be fun to celebrate 1 year. And I learned a lot being on YouTube. Let's put it that way. All right, so the things we're talking about today: Mass Effect, Cyberpunk 2077, and Sony on Game Pass. In the first segment, anyway. And you may recall this video that I did that got a lot of dislikes, and I don't know how many now, but it's almost like 50% dislikes at the moment. And I think people sometimes, well within their rights to dislike a video as well, but sometimes it's also like they didn't watch the entire video, and sometimes they dislike it just for the thumbnail or the title of the video. And fair enough, like if I read a headline and I don't like a headline, I will also dislike it as well. Sometimes I don't read the entire article. I mean, everybody does it different. Benjamin, how you going? So, and then the other thing is, in that video, I don't have a problem with butts. I don't have a problem with breasts, anything like that. If you want to put that in the game, that's fine. Because the only thing I was arguing about that was that the developer themselves wanted to take it out. So it doesn't really feel like censorship. I guess if you're really adamant that it's censorship, okay, we can disagree on that if you want. But if the developer himself takes it out of the game, then it's almost, to me, feel like an artist deciding, okay, well, I want to cut this scene out because I just don't like it. Or like, you know, a director's cut type of thing where you take a certain scene out because you don't like how it looked. And it's been about 15 years since this game came out, and it was time for them to have a new look for this game. But this week they gave a lot of information about the game, the remaster, and they gave more details about all of the changes in the game. So we'll just run through a little bit of it just so you get a gist of what will be in the game. This article is from Eurogamer, and it says BioWare offers detailed breakdown of Mass Effect Legendary Edition's extensive changes. Now, Mass Effect Legendary Edition, 14th of May, and it's going to be all 3 games and all of the single-player DLC of the original Mass Trilogy. And it gives the whole thing a modern-day sheen with support for 4K and HDR and 60 FPS on PC and consoles from PS4 Pro, Xbox One X, and onwards. Now, I'm not 100% sure if it's on PS5 or Xbox Series X, but obviously you will just be able to put those discs into the drive and play it that way. Let's go to the next part of this. It says here, combat in Mass Effect 1. Actually, you know what? Like, I'll just try and play the trailer if I can. See how it goes. Hang on. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Whoops. Okay, here we go. Let's just go with this. Whoops. All right. So essentially the combat in Mass Effect 1, which was originally intended to mimic the randomness of a dice roll and pen and paper stat building, will, for instance, be significantly tweaked in Mass Effect 1 to increase accuracy and reduce frustration. It doesn't stop there, however. The original game will also gain a melee button, rebalanced abilities, faster weapon cooldowns, inventory management improvements, and more. And I think what they're trying to do is make all 3 games play exactly the same way, so that when you move from Mass Effect 1 to Mass Effect 3 or 2, then you're going to have all of the same buttons and all the same combat in each one. And of course, you know, there will be improvements in 2 and 3 in terms of adding to the gameplay. But I think they want to make it so that it's a smoother transition. Because when they actually made Mass Effect 1, it was almost like a D&D style game, like, you know, how they had the Baldur's Gate games in the past. So you would hit somebody, and depending on like the dice roll in the background, it wouldn't actually hit somebody because you failed the roll. But let's bring this back. Whoops. Oh my goodness, hang on, come on. Why isn't the slideshow working? Oh, here we go, because the slideshow is already working. Okay, yeah, so BioWare also promises specific changes to encounters, enemies, and how players engage in combat in Mass Effect 1, all intended to bring the experience more in line with the sequel. Squad mates can now be commanded independently, for example, while XP is now recorded more consistently, and some enemy and boss encounters have been tweaked to be fairer. Additionally, BioWare says cover has been improved across the trilogy. And they actually had entire posting on their website, and you can go and check that out for yourself. I think if you just type in Mass Effect gameplay, I can't remember, but yeah, you should be able to find it pretty easy. Okay, they also talk about how they fixed the M35 Mako, which was the buggy. And I remember people complaining about the Halo buggy. Well, I think the Mass Effect buggy was probably about 10 times worse. But that's just from watching videos. I've actually never played Mass Effect 1. All the other Mass Effects. I did buy the first one, and then I got to the open area after the elevator, and then on the Xbox 360, the frame rate just tanked to like about 10 FPS. So then I was like, nope, I'm not playing this. And then I sold it to my friend. But I think it's kind of one of those games you kind of had to play at the time. A bit like KOTOR, Star Wars KOTOR. Because I think, well, now obviously you can play the Legendary Edition, although because it's such a long experience, I think a lot of people might not have the time to play it all. If you're a fan of it, then I guess you'll probably want to replay it all again. But playing all 3 games would take a long time. So other things that they said was more general trilogy-wide adjustments include updated character creation tools that introduce Mass Effect 3's FemShep as the default female option, proper integration for DLC weapons and armor, updated achievements, remixed audio, hundreds of legacy bug fixes, and more. And it'll be out 14th of May. And as I said, you can, if you're interested in all the changes, they basically listed all of them on their website, on EA's website, and you can just Google that and get that list yourself. Benjamin, I couldn't get into 1. It was kind of wonky to me. Yeah, it was in a way. I didn't play enough of it to be to feel it, but it was almost like the shooting was separate to what was happening on screen because of that D&D dice roll thing. So you'd be shooting somebody and it'd be like, oh, you failed all of these shots, so it wouldn't actually hit. So that had that weird jankiness. It didn't make sense. Okay. And as I said, this is the gameplay calibrations, that's what it was. So if you type in Mass Effect Legendary Edition gameplay calibrations into Google, you'll be able to get the list of all of the changes. Okay, so we're gonna talk about Sony on Game Pass now. And if these are the Game Pass games coming to Game Pass in April, And interesting because I'm more of a Xbox Game Pass for PC myself. So there's not a whole lot there for PC, but that's okay because the last couple of months were pretty crazy and I'm trying to catch up on stuff. And I wanted to play Dragon Quest 11 since January and it's April now. And I'm trying to finish Yakuza. And I want to at least play like 20, 30 hours of Dragon Quest 11 because it's probably my last chance to play it. And who knows, they might probably take it off after 6 months. But yeah, Game Pass. These are the April games. We've got Disneyland Adventures, which is not a very good game. I played that with the kids. Rush, so another Disney game. They've got NHL 21, and that's really interesting. They're going to get a lot of EA Sports games because now they got EA Play on their system. But this one is for console only, so I wish they wouldn't separate out PC and console. I think it should just come out on all platforms, cloud, console, PC, because it's really doing the whole thing a disservice. You see something like this in their marketing and you can't play it. And they need to work that out because, I don't see my PC as any different to the console. I only didn't buy the Xbox. So I don't think they should separate it out any longer. I hope they can fix that. But I don't know why they want to split that, to be quite honest with you. Okay, so we've got Rain on Your Parade. Rain on Your Parade, which is on all platforms. Pathway, which don't know anything about. Grand Theft Auto 5 is coming back to console. I believe it was on PC at one stage, but now it's just console. And I guess, it keeps on making money, this game. So it's probably something that Microsoft has asked for because people are spending money on this, so they want this on their Game Pass. Zombie Army 4. I don't know anything about Zombie Army 4, but the big one here is MLB The Show 21. And when I saw this, I couldn't believe my eyes because this is a Sony game on Microsoft. And so, what are we getting next? Nintendo games on Microsoft? Probably not, but I thought this was really interesting, and I really wanted to know why they put a Sony game on Microsoft's, and essentially helping out your competition. And even though Microsoft didn't want to do that with their Bethesda games, well, that's kind of what I want to know. Like, what are the dynamics behind like a Sony game going onto Microsoft? And so let's take a look at this. So Operation Sports says, decision to bring MLB The Show 21 to Xbox Game Pass came straight from Major League Baseball. And it says here, from a PlayStation representative, as part of the goal of this year's game, MLB decided to bring the franchise to more players and baseball fans, a PlayStation representative tells Inverse. This decision provides a unique opportunity to further establish MLB The Show as the premier brand for baseball video games. And I mean, there isn't really any other baseball game out there anyway. There's RBI, but if you have the official license, you are most likely going to do really well. And I think this is a big deal actually, because when you think about it, all of the other games, say like EA FIFA, Madden, NBA, they're all on multi-platforms, and even NHL is on multi-platform. So MLB was really the one that had its league license locked down to one platform, and it was time for them to spread out a bit more. And I think they picked a good time because essentially, as you know from like just say the console sales, right now it's probably a 2-to-1 install base in favor of PlayStation versus Xbox. So we know this from the number of console or CPU chips manufactured for each console. So it's about a 2-to-1 difference. So I reported on this a couple months back, but essentially PlayStation were ordering like about 10 million units for Q4 of last year, and Xbox was ordering half of that amount. So they were ordering like maybe 5 million units. So I guess MLB, they want to bring, they see this another 5 million people as potential, not 5 million people, the 50% of people as another reason why they really need to make sure they get onto as many platforms as they can get. And they can get it on Xbox, and now they can get it on PC. Well, hopefully later. I think MLB is on Steam. I need to check, but also now it's also on cloud. So this is a big decision from MLB itself, but a call that kind of makes sense to me, seeing as all of the other, they're kind of all competing with the other sports as well, like in terms of getting fans and stuff. Because how many sports can you truly follow? Sure, you have some sports in winter and some sports in summer, but I think at the end of the day, I follow two sports. I follow NBA and I follow the Premier League. And they're kind of like all competing with everybody, like all of the sports. Like I can only have so much sports because I've got a ton of other things to do. So I think MLB doing this makes sense, because if they don't, they're really pigeonholing themselves into like a very small market. Even though PlayStation sells a lot of consoles, it makes sense for them to get onto as many platforms as possible. Okay, so here's an article from Inverse, and they're talking about why Sony wanted to do this, or if it was indeed Sony's decision, because it seems like it's coming from the MLB. And the article is, will more PlayStation games come to Xbox Game Pass? Analysts weigh in on MLB deal. So there's two analysts here. I just want to share some of their thoughts with you. I'm not saying like all analysts get everything spot on. I certainly don't. I'm not an analyst, but I don't get anything spot on. But it's interesting to hear their thoughts about this deal. So here's one. Omdia principal analyst from the second paragraph, George Gigiashvili, tells Inverse this move is primarily about expanding the series reach. This is all about MLB finding a bigger audience, which took precedence over console manufacturer jousting, he explains. Ampere analyst research director Piers Harding Rolls considers this a practical move on MLB's part. From MLB's point of view, this makes commercial sense as it opens up the content to a lot more players, especially in the US, but also keeps the established studio working on the game, Harding Rolls explains. I'm sure MLB has been watching the in-game monetization of other sports games franchises such as Madden and FIFA with interest, and is thinking about audience reach rather than premium sales in this case. According to Ampere's comments, Xbox Game Pass now has over 18 million subscribers. As such, it makes a lot of sense that MLB would see it as an attractive opportunity. And when you think about it, 18 million subscribers, this is a really good time for them to get onto Game Pass, because it's basically the first year of the new consoles. So not everybody has the new console, and if you have the game on Xbox One or Xbox One X, well, you can play it on your old console and it's free. You don't have to pay like $60 for it. You can just play it on your older console. So they also asked the question, why are AAA games coming to Game Pass at launch? And I'll just read from the second paragraph. For some titles, launching day one into Game Pass is an increasingly risk-averse strategy. It secures a payment upfront, offers an engaged audience of over 18 million subscribers that can still be monetized through in-game spending, and there is the flexibility of removing the title to boost premium sales at a later date if required. Those titles that are not top tier in sales volume terms, or that are based on new IP, do not have an established audience, could be solid candidates for day one releases. And that tells you a lot. That tells you like basically almost every game, if it's not AAA, it's going to get onto Game Pass, or has a very good chance to. And you see this with, say, like the Yakuza games. They need the payment straight away. They don't want to risk the market, especially with such a crowded market as it is. And so if you go onto Game Pass, you get the audience, and maybe you don't get $50-$60 from 18 million subscribers, right? But maybe the deal is like, okay, Microsoft is going to give you $15 to $20 each for each of the 18 million subscribers, or $10 or whatever it is. But that's a decent payment. Would you rather take 2 million people at $60 or 18 million people at $10 each? So I think this sort of model makes a lot of sense. And a lot of these A-level games, not AA or AAA games, could find themselves on Game Pass like this. And that's exactly why Outriders was done day one. With day one, they probably could secure a bigger fee. And if this model works, like it's showing here, like if Outriders is successful, then Sony really has to question themselves about what is their model. Surely a model for them has to be coming at some point, because you pick a console with no Game Pass or a console with Game Pass with like 90% of the games going onto Game Pass. Like, it's a pretty easy decision if you don't really care about Sony or Xbox. And also, it's not even just about owning the box anymore. It's about how much playtime you get on the box. And that's what Microsoft is also gunning for. If you have both consoles and you spend more time on the Microsoft one, then you're going to spend more money on the Microsoft one. So that's what Game Pass is also trying to do. And it kills two birds with one stone. From Microsoft's perspective, even paying a substantial sum to secure the game on release is worth it. He explains, Microsoft is not thinking about short-term profitability as it continues its aggressive content and subscriber acquisition path for Game Pass. Competitively, the optics of this move are strong and keeps the Game Pass momentum building. And this happened with PS Plus. I would say, I think around about the PS3 time, when they started giving away AAA games. And Sony made a mistake there when they decided that they were giving too much away, because their model is about selling $60 games. So then they decided to take these big games that were maybe like about 4 or 5 months from release, and then they decided not to offer those games anymore, and instead like offer indie games. And it was incredible at the time as well. Like PS4, when I think PS4 released, everybody was saying, give Sony some time, because the console is just released, so they're not going to give away AAA games when the console just released. Well, it took them the PS4 era, the number of AAA games that they decided to give really thinned out as compared to, say, that period in PS3 where they were almost giving away AAA games like every month. Because at the time, it was like, okay, PS Plus, you've got a budget, now spend your budget, and then they could buy these AAA games, and then they were like, well, you're giving away, the games you're giving away are too good. Hello, Mr. Juanito, how are you? The games you're giving away on PS Plus are too good, you better tone it down a little bit. And right now, Microsoft is like, no, we need to keep the momentum going, because that's what keeps people subscribing to this. And somebody actually asked me, do I think that it's going to tone down a little after a while? Like, or do you think Microsoft will, I guess once they get enough subscribers, they'll want to increase the monthly fee for it? Because right now it's like about $10. And I think it was about, it's $15 if you want both on PC and console. But really, you only need it on one. So I guess like if you have a console, just get it on the console for $10. But I don't think they're going to increase the price, because as long as the number of subscribers keep growing, they're probably not going to increase the price. It's probably only going to happen if they start to stagnate. Then they have two choices, whether they well, they can just offer the developer less for the game, and maybe they'll still be happy to take a lesser amount of money as long as it's a secure upfront payments. But it doesn't seem like it makes any sense for them to increase the price, because that will also drive people away as well. So I don't think they're going to increase the price on Game Pass. Vincent says they will. Well, yeah, well, they could very well, but I'm saying, like, if I had to guess, if I was Phil Spencer, I probably wouldn't increase the price if the subscriber numbers are growing, because if you grow your subscribers, then you should just get more money anyways, like that, and it will keep people subscribing. I think people are very adverse right now to any types of increases in price. So as soon as they see like 5% or 10%, even though it's like, you know, maybe 50 cents or $1, they will see that as a reason for them to reconsider. Right now, nobody's reconsidering leaving Game Pass. So it's best that they don't give people the thinking behind, like, right now, if everyone's happy to just continue subscribing on, then just leave everything alone. They're giving you the money already, and the 50 cents or whatever it is not really worth it. Mr. Juanito says, I think Microsoft is going to be the leading market for Game Pass for a long time because of the amazing selection of games. Yeah, they have a lot of games and nobody really can play that many, which is why I understand why they take some games off. And there's over 400 or 500 games at the moment, and it's just not possible to play that many. But you do need a good selection of games, which I hope they will put like about 1,000 games in the end on it and rotate them. I think that would be plenty for most people. Popular ones like Forza Horizon 4, $60, $100, Doom, $60. Exactly. So if you just want to try it out, like even if you just want to play one game, it's really worth it, because like you just pay the $10 for the month and play. And I don't know, like I don't know about other people, but I don't play a game that long. So I'm more of a variety gamer. Like I play a lot of different games, so it suits me. Maybe if you just play one game, you'd probably want to buy it. Like if you play Forza Horizon 4 religiously and you've been playing for the last 2 years, maybe you want to buy it. But of course, Forza Horizon probably won't get taken down. That's a Microsoft game. But if it was something else, like say Dragon Quest or whatever, maybe you want to buy that if you want to play that continuously. Okay, let's get to the last bit of this segment, and it says, will more PlayStation games come to Game Pass? And they also have a comment on that. This development is unlikely to have tangible ramifications on future Sony exclusives. Gija Shavili asserts, I believe this was a unique case where a games license holder forced Sony's hand. And Harding Rolls says, I don't expect Sony to make a habit of it, no. Still, the release of MLB The Show 21 is a groundbreaking moment as a Sony game comes to Xbox Game Pass for the first time. And I would say that, yeah, that probably makes sense, because if you look back to what Microsoft wants to do with Bethesda, they don't want those games on Sony, and they don't want those games on Nintendo. They want to keep it on their platforms. That's what platform holders do. They want exclusive games. Consumers want games on all platforms. It's just obvious, and it's something that we have to continually ask for, because we're not going to get anything given for granted as consumers. So that's why I said, I made a video about 5 months ago when they announced the Microsoft Bethesda acquisition. I said that was a bad deal for consumers. Nobody watched the video, but that's okay. But of course, it's so weird to me, like if people shield for companies. So I don't really get that. Let's take this question. What do you think of Intel's new release of their new 10nm Xeons, and what do you think of Intel's situation against AMD Threadripper CPU? And I've got that lined up as something to talk about after Threadripper today. I don't really have that much comment to say on it, because I follow most of the gaming CPUs, so it's really hard for me to talk about, like, say, server CPUs. So I have to say I don't know that much about it, but I just wanted to touch on it because if this 10 nanometer is coming out at the moment on time, you can expect Alder Lake to also come out on time in October. And I think we're getting close enough to now that there isn't going to be a delay on 10 nanometer. There was a 7 nanometer delay, which I think got pushed back to 2023. And that's just 7 nanometer, I think. So I think Alder Lake should come out. The 10 nanometer Xeons, well, again, I don't really know, but I think we can explore that a little bit later. I've got some slides and things like that that we can read out. And then obviously once we have a look at that information, then we can make a comment on it. But yeah, it kind of feels like just an update to their old Xeon, really. But as for like Xeon versus Epic, I don't really. Then you'd have to get into the nitty gritty of like, well, Xeons are good at this and Epics are good at this, and I'm not the person to ask for that. Okay, I convinced my father to switch and buy a Ryzen 9 3900X and was impressed with the performance that he used to. So he had the 7700K and now he moved up to the 3900X. I would say that they're almost similar in terms of performance, in terms of gaming. So is he playing games? Or I would say that in terms of other production workloads, then the 3900X would be much stronger. But in gaming, I think it would be close enough that you wouldn't be able to tell. That's just off the top of my head and what benchmarks are like. So maybe in practice, the 3900X is much better. Okay. So we move on to our next story, which is Cyberpunk 2077. And this is the patch 1.2, which dropped. And it says here Cyberpunk 2077's patch dropped last week. So I wasn't sure exactly when, but they already made a video on this. I'm going to play that video. Let me see if I can get it up on the other screen. Okay, hang on. You're going to have to bear with me while I switch things around. Okay, let me see. Okay. Well, hopefully we don't get an ad first up. Is this? Okay, I'm going to make myself a bit smaller. Okay, I think I'm getting a hang of this. All right, so now let's talk about Cyberpunk 2077, and we're going to play this Digital Foundry video in the back so you can have something to watch while I moan on about how bad Cyberpunk 2077 was, at least on PC anyway. But as you can see, the 1.2 patch actually only improved the PS4 Pro version, and it's, for me at least, I understand why they did that, because they decided to focus in on one specific console and make sure the performance on that was good enough for that actual console. Because the reason how they improved it was all to do with the hardware limitations of each platform. So they decided to go with PS4 Pro first because the most number of users was on PS4 Pro, and so we didn't really see any of the improvements for Xbox One X, but I believe that they will come down in the future, unless, of course, say for example, no one else is playing it on Xbox One X later on. Maybe they will decide the patch won't be worth it at that point. But they gave priority to PS4 Pro. What do they do on the PS4 Pro? Well, let's have a look at this article. So this article says it's all about the background streaming technology, the way in which assets such as geometry and textures are brought in from storage, decompressed, then rendered on screen. We spotted the change deployed on PS4, PS4 Pro, and Xbox One, but curiously, Xbox One X doesn't seem to be much change from version 1.1. Put simply, there's the sense that streaming perhaps runs with a lower priority than it did previously, targeting frame rate improvements at the expense of resolving detail. Environmental assets take longer to load, Pop-in is now more of an issue than it was previously. You could say that there are streaming delays, but details does render in eventually given time. However, in dense city spots while driving quickly, some aspects of the environment now fail to load in at all before they pass you by. Okay, so essentially what really happened is like, let me just accept this comment from Jack. Hello, Jack. Okay, so essentially what's happening is like you've got and often when people talk about bandwidth, it's like, using pipe analogy. And so you got this pipe and you got this PS4 Pro, and essentially they were trying to stuff as many textures down the pipe as they could, and it got stuck, which was why you get the frame rate dips. And with this, now they're reducing the amount of stuff that they're trying to stuff down that pipe. So stuff is not going to be loading in. You have stuff that essentially won't load in until you get closer. So they're limiting the number of assets streamed in. And they probably have to go through everything scene by scene to make sure that the amount of stuff in that scene is not as much as it's going to like kill the frame rate. So I would expect them to have been playing through the entire game and then just removing stuff as they see like the frame rate is dipping, which is a pretty nuisance way of doing it. But it would be tough to like just do it wholesale. I mean, if it was that easy, then it would have been done like in a week. But I'm guessing they probably played through the game. They had to remove lots of stuff where the frame rate dips, and they probably know exactly where and what. They got a bunch of QA testers. And so they did that with the PS4 Pro first. And as you can see, like they took a ton of stuff out, like a lot of assets and reflections on the ground while you're driving are gone. So then the other thing was like, well, is this a downgrade? Should you be going to 1.2 then if you don't want that downgrade? Well, the thing is, like, it's not like you'll ever be able to get new hardware. It's not like your PS4 will suddenly get a new GPU. So do you want that performance improvement? Do you want 20 FPS or 30 FPS? And I'm guessing most people are going to go with the smoother frame rate. You're not going to notice a lot of the stuff that they're going to take out. There are things like, signs, like say a sign on top of a shop. So, and like, a lot of objects lying around are gone as well. But honestly, I feel like for example, if you just saw there was a sign that was missing on the patch 1.2. And I don't think when people are playing, they're really going to notice. And actually, I find that really, really interesting. So if you don't notice this, if they're willing to take it out, right? Then what does that actually say about ray tracing? If they're willing to take all of this stuff out for the frame rate performance improvement, then what does it say about all of the ray tracing that they were adding into the game for the PC version to make it as GPU intensive as possible? Wouldn't it make more sense to get as many people playing this game as possible rather than trying to make this game look, in a way that only people with, say, like a 2070 could play this game? And when this game was going to come out, it was originally scheduled to come out in September last year. How many people had above a RTX 2070? Like, everybody was waiting for the new Ampere cards. And even at that point, like, you wouldn't expect that many people to be able to get their hands on an Ampere card, even if the supply was good. Like, surely you'd have to wait, like, say, a year or something before a 3070 or a 3080 became more mainstream. And even then, it would be something like a 2060 or 2070 that would be more mainstream. Wouldn't you want to make the game play better on, like, say, a 1070, 1080, which at the time would have been a normal card that most people would have had? It didn't make sense to me for them to make a game that was too strong for PC. it was almost like only 2% of people could play Mass Effect. Cyberpunk 2077. Okay, so I was reading the chat. Okay, Mr. Juanita says, it wouldn't make sense for focusing on one console. They should have made a survey or see which console has more consumers and focus on that. So, Mr. Juanita, they already have all of the stats of exactly how many people play and how many hours they played and who's playing and where they're from and all of that sort of thing. They have all of those stats because your PS4 and your PS3 even was sending information to all of the developers and Sony for the last 15 years. So they already have all of that information. They know who's on what system. And so they only had time. Well, I mean, you'd think a big company like CD Projekt Red would have time to fix all of the consoles. And it seems like they don't. It seems as though that they only fix one console. At least that's what the results of this video are saying. They're basically saying that PS4, the base PS4, and the base Xbox One didn't really get an improvement on 1.2. You only got improvement on the PS4 Pro, which had went from, say, about 25 FPS in general to about 30 FPS. And that's consoles, right? That they're targeting 30 FPS. And obviously on PC, we want to have 60 FPS, but it's also held down by the CPU of these, the PS4 and the Xbox One. Mr. Juanita, I think by now Cyberpunk is dead. Yeah, I seem to feel that way as well. Like, a lot of people played it. I don't know if I think there were more people than expected that were underwhelmed by Cyberpunk, because I don't know about you, but this doesn't really feel Cyberpunk to me still. And even before, when they released trailers and previews and that, you could kind of tell, hey, wait a minute, is this supposed to be like GTA? Are they trying to make an open world game? And I think there are some elements of cyberpunkiness like in this, mostly to do with the way people dress or whatever, but it doesn't feel dystopian enough. But again, it's only 50 years. It's like 2077. But I think people wanted more of a dystopia. Maybe the world we live in right now is enough of a dystopia anyway. So it's like, hey, they got it bad, but like I don't really see. We're going on the same trajectory. Like, this isn't the dystopia. I expected it to be way worse. Okay, so they should have made it a PC exclusive instead of every console. Okay, so that's a really interesting point, and I think if you're a AAA game, then you might not be able to afford not to be on consoles. If you're a AAA game, you'd want to be on all your platforms. So the only mistake that they really made was that they didn't jettison the base PS4 and, well, they really should have just made it as the PS5 and Xbox Series. They should have only made it on those next generation platforms. Because once they made this game and then they realized that the way that they were going forward was, okay, we want to have a game that performs at a 2070 level, then really there is no way for them to ever go back to a base PS4, especially with, say, like the Jaguar cores inside them, which are incredibly weak. They were weak already in 2013, and you're trying to get a modern game running on that. Like on my 10900K, this is using 10 cores, 20 threads at 5 gigahertz, and the Jaguar cores is at like 2.2 gigahertz, something like that, on 8 cores. So you can't like, it would probably be like 1/3 the power that your CPU. So you're expecting the CPU to load in exactly the same stuff. It doesn't make sense, doesn't work, and they did it because they had a contractual obligation to bring it out. They probably figured that, okay, well, we can get this running on like 720p. If it's running, then we'll just release it, take the money, and then we'll worry about the PS5 version when it comes. And then they knew it was bad because I don't think CD Projekt Red are the type of developer that ignores monetary concerns, and the fact that they offered PS4 users the PS5 upgrade for free, that shows that they knew exactly that the PS4 version was going to be bad. They had to offer the PS5 version for free because the PS4 version was in no state to get released. And you know, if they just killed off the PS4 and the Xbox One version and just released it next year, I think it would have got a lot better reception. I think they made a mistake. They probably won't make that mistake again to release a game that doesn't play well and doesn't function well just to take that money. Let me try and skip this ad. We don't need ads. Oh, that's the end of the video. And I think I don't even know if I touched on everything I was going to say. Let me get back to... And this is the problem with my show, is like I lose track of time. So let me see if I can get this. I think I pretty much covered most of it, because essentially all the article was really saying was that you get an improvement on the PS4 Pro. There's no improvement on the PS4 and Xbox One. They'll probably come at some other time. But if they can fix it for the Pro, then they should be able to fix it a little bit for the PS4 and Xbox One, even though it's basically fixed by this really crappy hardware there. It's not going to get a leaps and bounds improvement, but maybe you'd be able to fix a few of the dead spots, like where it just tanks to like 10 FPS or goes to a blue screen. The changes made from 1.1 to 1.2 just shows more corner cutting. Well, it depends what you want to call it, Last Rights, because there's a budget, an asset budget or the textures budget or whatever you want to call it, and they can only spend however the limit of that console. They put too much in to begin with. You can see that from the PC version. They overreached, and they simply can't have that much stuff on the consoles. So if you want to call it corner cutting, yeah, but they're really taking stuff away that there's no way they could have made that game work on that system. Mr. Juanito says, another question, how would it feel taking 4 years in a game, but every year there's new GPU and CPU releasing? Do they need to add more objects or details for the new GPU? Okay, see you, Juanito. I was just going to answer your question, but I guess other people can listen to it. Okay, I will say that... See ya. I will say that that's a really tricky question, because I don't really see that many games adding stuff later on, because when you're developing a game, then you hire a set number of artists, blah blah blah, and then you already have a team of like say 100 people working. So if you want to add more stuff, then it's not within your project management schedule. I think a lot of people wouldn't just suddenly add in another team of 30 people to add another 20-30% of stuff in game. And I don't think your artists would be able to work 20-30% harder. So we don't really see people adding stuff into the game like that. Maybe after the game, but even then, a lot of it is to do with gameplay functions, rather than say what it looks like in graphics and art assets, because that's going to change up the entire game. So yeah, once they've decided on the game, it's almost as if it's fixed. So I don't think they will add more stuff in, even if there's new GPUs and CPUs releasing. So Cyberpunk, if you go back, actually there's some interesting videos online comparing the 2018 version of Cyberpunk that they showed at E3 versus the 2021 that was going to be releasing, and it's almost like it's a brand new game. Like the 2020 version looks like it's completely redone up. It's like somebody putting on makeup, basically. And actually, you know, it kind of begged the question at the time for me, what happened? Why did they suddenly decide to change it? Which is why I made my video on Cyberpunk 2077 and said that, you know, something is up here. Like, why would they suddenly make this game look completely different? Like, they've had new assets everywhere. They've added a ton of more stuff into the game. It was almost as if, like, well, at the time I said, they really want this game to be more future-proof so that people would be playing or buying it like 3 or 4 years down the track. Because right now, this game's not going to run on a 1070. Like, just by looking at it, it's not going to run at a 1070. You need a 2070 to run this. And at the time, no one had a 2070, or very few people had 2070s. People were waiting for the Ampere GPUs as well. So they made a decision somewhere between, say, like 2018 and 2020 to go, hey, I'm going to make this game for future GPUs rather than existing GPUs. Then the PS4 and the Xbox One version also suffered as well because of that. Because now they have, it's more demanding. The game is just more demanding, and these old consoles can't take those demands. So what else have we got in this article? I think you guys can just read the article yourself. I'm not going to read all of this, but it is interesting, and I recommend that you guys go and watch that video later on because it's got a voiceover track and they do a really good job of explaining everything. But yeah, and also I think it doesn't mention anything about PC. So I guess the PC version was okay. So they didn't do much to it, but maybe they just fixed a lot of the bugs. But PS4 Pro was the one where they had some performance improvements. Okay, so this is right, Threadripper. So I think what we're going to do is, well, I'll just answer this question from Last Rice, and then we'll go to a break. Last Rice says, I mainly mean that they had 6 months at this point and only optimized the X Pro consoles mainly by removing some assets effects. They're going to put more effort into DLC. I expect more bugs, mainly. Yeah, I understood what you meant from that. I don't really see like how they could have made it perform any better if they didn't cut the corners. It had to be one or the other because it simply just wasn't, the old consoles just weren't powerful enough. Especially when it was starting to choke on the PCs. But yeah, so that's going to do it for this section of the gaming chat or the gaming news. And then what we're going to do, I'm going to take a break for a couple of minutes so I can get a drink, go to the toilet. And then what we're going to do is we're going to talk about Threadripper in hardware news and also Intel 10 nanometer. So don't go away. We'll be right back in a couple of minutes. Okay, we're back, and I need to set up my screens. I don't know what's going on now. Hang on. Okay, here we go. Got the chat back. Let me see if I can get my. Okay. Well, there's not a whole lot of hardware news this week, so this section might be a little shorter than usual, which is a good thing because I'm trying to keep to like an hour and a half for my streams. And sure, if I go a little bit over, that's fine. But a few of my streams have been going for 3 hours, and I need to be a little bit more succinct than what I say. Let's put it that way. I don't need to make it a 3-hour show every time. Okay, but what we've got here is AMD Ryzen Threadripper 5000 in August. So it looks like they might come out with another Threadripper again. And, you know, that's funny because is anything competing with the Threadripper at the moment? Intel Xeons, but how long ago was that? Let's take a look at this. So we've got AMD has not revealed its official plans for Ryzen Threadripper 5000 yet, despite numerous virtual events taking place in the last few months. The Zen 3 based high performance desktop series has already been expected since AMD introduced its Vermeer series back in November last year. The last Threadripper series was introduced in July 2020. Those were AMD's new Threadripper Pro series, which only made its way to the DIY market last month. Which actually I was surprised. I thought they came out last year, but I guess they didn't. However, the last non-Pro series was launched in November 2019, which means AMD has not updated its HEDT lineup for nearly 16 months. The next-gen Threadripper series, codenamed Chargle, is expected to be compatible with current TRX 40 motherboards. Thus, motherboard makers are currently waiting for a new AGESA firmware update with Chargle support. Not to mention the actual engineering samples. The fact that those were not distributed yet might confirm the rumor that the launch date is pushed back. A known leaker, Kitty Yuko, which some of our readers may still remember as Kitty Corgi, has said on Twitter, in addition, and by the way, Kitty Corgi gave a really good Ampere leak in April last year, which was pretty much spot on, by the way, his Ampere leak. In addition, in August, AMD will release a new generation Threadripper processor. Okay, and so this is the tweet that he made. He or she says, in addition, in August, AMD will release a new generation Threadripper processor, which is really exciting stuff. But not everybody can get one because they're so expensive. I think at least the 24 core. Well, there was one before that. I think it was like 16 cores, which was similar to the Ryzen 3950X. But even that one was like twice the price of the 3950X. So these are really expensive, and they give you the 4 DDR4 memory channels, whereas your typical, say, Ryzen's, normal users Ryzen's, like the Zen 3 Ryzen's, and the Intel ones, they'll only give you the 2 lanes of DDR4 memory support. So these give you 4. So some people I've seen have actually been using these as gaming machines, CPUs. But I think for most people, that extra 2 lane support isn't really going to be worth paying the extra amount for the for the CPU. And they come with a lot of PCIe 4-lane support, and I guess for pro work solutions, okay, but I don't think that's really that useful for gamers. Vincent, did you win a Newegg shuffle? Because I heard these were pretty hard to win. But the Threadrippers they're really expensive, and I think it was something like $1,500 to $2,000 for the starting model. And so the one that you see here, the 3990X, was $3,000 US, I think it was. Which is also surprised. The base clock is surprising, 2.9 gigahertz, when the 3970X has a base clock of 3.7 gigahertz. And I guess is the type of thing where when you have such a big die, then you can't really be pushing that much power into it, or you got to spread it out a bit more. So this thing is already at 280 watts. And so really all we got was a date. So we didn't really get that much information, but it's interesting. And I think it's about the right time where they would come out with something. Threadripper in August, even October, like 1 year after Zen 3. I don't think there's going to be a Zen 4 this year. And yeah, there's not that much to say about this, except we got a new date. And I think it's mostly for people who are doing production workloads, not gaming. But if you're interested, if money is no limit, then you could probably go for, say, like a 5970X, 5980X. Comes with like 3.7 gigahertz base clock. Turbo clock will be 4.5 gigahertz or thereabouts. It'll be a little bit better because it'll be on Zen 3 versus Zen 2. And you'll get that 4 times DDR4 memory support. Vincent, you won a 5950X. So this is the thing, like, surely everybody would just enter the competition to win it stuff, because if there's a competition for it, therefore you could just resell the thing. But I guess I understand why they would have to do a shuffle, because really there's just not enough supply of anything out there at the moment. But I think also at the same time, maybe the shuffles make it worse, because maybe all the scalpers are entering in it as well. The 3060 Ti, well, I think you could probably sell that for a lot of money if you didn't want it, because that still seems to be the king of mining GPUs. And you know, I don't even know for miners or anybody really who'd want to pay for that 3070. I think the 3060 Ti only has one, you know, the 8-pin connectors. I think the 3060 Ti has just the one 8-pin connector, and then the 3070 has one 8-pin and one 6-pin. So that helps miners a whole bunch if that's the case. I don't recall. Maybe the 3060 Ti has the 6-pin as well. Your friend won twice in a row. Yeah, it's like winning the lottery, sort of. You just have to on-sell the product afterwards. Intel launches its most advanced performance data center platform. So this is about 10 nanometer. And all I really wanted to say here is that this is a Intel 10 nanometer product that is a big die, which, I mean, I'm not somebody who, I guess, talks about the server side of things a lot. But it appears that if this item is, or if this product is going to be coming out, then you can bet that Alder Lake will probably come out in October then. And, you know, that's interesting because maybe Intel will actually have, well, I won't say upper hand, but like, I don't think AMD is going to come out with Zen 4 this year. I don't think they should be too worried because they could just come up with some sort of like refresh. But I think Intel, if this is coming out now, then in terms of gamers and Alder Lake and all of that sort of thing, then it's looking very likely that Intel will probably come out with Alder Lake. And, you know, you don't have to take this information as like financial advice, but Intel shares are like really bad at the moment. It's like $50 or so. And so there could be this, I guess, a bit of a run up to when Alder Lake releases. But yeah, I think I don't think you should do that. But you know, you could think about the possibility that you could get a bit from the share market. I think I put that all badly, but so let's just forget about that. But yeah, I think there's a possibility that if the Intel shares are at all-time low, then maybe it will come up as Alder Lake comes up. But the Rocket Lake marketing was so bad that I don't know how they're going to recover it in time for Alder Lake. But let's have a little look at this Intel data center stuff. And for me personally, I don't really follow this as much because there's just so much stuff for me to like follow. Like I want to talk a lot about the gaming side as well, and I know a lot of hardware people don't talk about the games itself, so they would probably be the ones to follow because like, they'd probably follow this stuff more. But it says here 3rd gen Intel Xeon scalable processors up to 40 cores per processor, 20% IPC improvement, mostly because of the fact that they moved down to 10 nanometer process, a 1.46 average performance increase, a 1.74 times AI inference increase, and a 2.65 times average performance increase versus 5-year-olds. Well, yeah, exactly. They're comparing this to the 2nd gen, which was about 5 years ago. And this is, I don't even remember this. This is like Cascade Lake. Like, I don't remember this at all. But so the 3rd gen is being announced. It's coming out. And you can see the specs there. So 40 cores per socket. And I don't know why they would want to release an 8 core, because you could just buy, say, Rocket Lake if you wanted to. So I'm not sure what the reason is there. I guess you get more memory channels. You get 8. And the processor interconnect is a little bit improved from the last gen Intel Xeon. PCIe lanes per socket, 64 lanes. I want to say currently Rocket Lake is 20 lanes or 24 lanes or something like that, but I'm not 100% sure. Workload acceleration instructions and a whole bunch of new workload instructions. Crypto is in there, which is really interesting. I guess, look, you know, the thing with crypto is that a lot of these big companies are backing it now. So it's almost like if they can't beat it, they got to join it. And that's why Bitcoin, last time, it failed because there weren't enough big companies getting on board. But in the meantime, since between 2018 and 2020, don't think that they weren't doing anything. They spent this entire time preparing for crypto, because if you understand the technology, then you'll want to invest in it. And so they spent the last they got really lucky that it didn't keep on continually going up. And they had this dip where they could work on it for the last 2 years, and they could they could prepare themselves for next run up. And that's what we're getting now, the next run up. And I don't know, even if it drops, I don't think it's going to tank to what happened last time, because last time it went from like about $20,000 to about $3,000 in terms of Bitcoin. And it may tank again this time when people want to take profits and things out, but I don't think it's going to tank like last time. And it's not financial advice. But there's just too many big companies involved at the moment, too many governments, entities, and if the US government really wanted it, they could just get rid of it if they wanted to. They could just ban it, just like the Indian government banned crypto. But they want in on the action as well, because they see this as a viable technology, especially if they're in the lead, that they can maintain that lead themselves and then make money from it and grow the economy. And I think that's about it. But there was one more tweet from, and this is from Dr. Ian Catras. He writes for Anantech, and he says it's excuse me. He says it's 660 millimeters, and that's really big. I think like Rocket Lake is 270, so it will be double the size of Rocket Lake. Well, I guess 240 core Xeons is kind of like, say, 2 Ryzen 5 5950Xs, right? Like, I think the 5950X might be something like 300 mil. So then you would just It's like 2 of those basically. And that about does it for today. I didn't even realize I was just on the browser there. Oops. But you pretty much all got the information anyway. I think there was one more thing that I wanted to show you guys before we just break for, I guess, the after show chat. Now, what was it? It was something to do with the bit main CoinDesk. Oh, another one. Okay. Riot. Okay, yeah, it's about Riot, CoinDesk. Okay, let me pick this up. Okay, here we go. Now, I spent last week watching a bit of Bitcoin stuff online, a lot of Bitcoin documentaries. Bitmain is basically the biggest Bitcoin miner in the world, but they also make machines or ASIC machines. And so they're selling mining machines, ASIC machines, to Riot blockchain. So if we take a look at this article, it says here, Riot blockchain signs contract to purchase 42,000 mining machines from Bitmain. Once active, these additional miners will increase the firm's Bitcoin mining hash rate by 93%, which that's huge. Like, it's like they're almost coming out from nowhere to buy these machines. So if they only had like 7% of that hash rate previously, that's a huge investment, and they're going all in basically. It's almost like if they only had like 3,000 mining machines previously. Okay, anyway, let's take a look at some of these points. In an announcement Wednesday, Riot Blockchain said it plans to buy the S19j Antminers machines for $138.5 million. Once active, these additional miners would increase the firm's Bitcoin mining hash rate by 93%. Now, how much money are you going to make with this? Well, on a GPU right now, if I buy a, let's say a 3090, if I buy a 3090 for $3,000, hey Matthew, what time was the Sony on Game Pass? How do you mean? You could just like scroll back and then just watch that Sony on Game Pass segment that I did earlier. So, and then you can catch up later on to the live stuff if you want. But at the moment we're doing Bitcoin, and I've done the Sony thing. I think it was like about half an hour in. I did the Sony on Game Pass, so you can check that out there. Okay, but as I was saying, okay, if I buy a 3090 for $3,000. And it mines $10 a day, so it'll take me 300 days to make my money back. I expect the 3090 will probably last me about 5-6 years in terms of mining. I mean, like we're talking figuratively, right? So let's say it was like it takes me a year to mine the coin. So so they invested 138 million. So they're probably looking to get a return like 5x on that. Over say like 5 years. So I think that's what's happening here. They're spending like 138 million, and they're going to get that money back say within like 10 months. And you know, for a lot of companies that's huge. Like you know, in the business that we're working in, I know that if I only have to put in like money and then get it back within 10 months, that's a no-brainer deal. A lot of businesses these days, if you're buying say a machine or something, they might say, well, you might get your money back in like 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. Like if you buy a property, you might get your money back in 10 years, right? So you know that. So this is a no-brainer deal, like at 10 months. And for GPUs, like when the Ampere cards first came out and people realized what the hash rate was and people realized the profit return on that, getting your money back in 3 months is a no-brainer deal. Like, you don't have to be, you could be a 5-year-old and you could realize, hey, I'm getting my 3090 for free. Like, for $1,500, you get that money back in 5. If you paid $699 for a 3080, you would have got your money back in less than 3 months. Vincent, no, don't buy 3090 just for mining. I see you've been watching my video then. Because even though I've done all of that thermal pad replacement stuff, I still maintain that I don't think most people should get a 3090, especially if they're going to be mining and gaming. Because, well, for one, it's very hot. So I don't know where you guys put your PC, but like, it'd obviously be close to you. It'd be close to your monitor or at your feet or whatever. So then it's very hot to get a 3090. I just put my 3070 back in today. Well, sorry, not today. This week. And the 3070, I can't even feel it. Whereas the 3090 is basically, I have an electric fan heater right next to me. So that's one reason why you probably don't need a 3090 for those extra maybe 20-30% of performance. Like, I think a 3070 for most people, or the 3070 level of performance, should be decent enough for most people to go, hey, like, I'm okay with playing 60 FPS in Cyberpunk 2077, which is one of the most demanding games out there anyway. So I think the 3090, I don't see a use case right now for a 3090, and especially not when the price was like $1,500. I think the price now is more than that. It's like $3,000. So there's no way anybody should buy a $3,000 GPU. It's too expensive for what it is. And also, you know, the thing is, like, I kind of felt guilty. Well, not guilty, but like every time I played a game, it would be taking away time from actually getting my money back mining and getting my money back that I paid for the GPU. So I was like, well, maybe I should just put a 3070 in there and then mine with the 3090 the whole time. That way I can get my money back as quick as I can. Last Rise says, complete absolute overkill. Yeah, it kind of is, you know. So the reason I got it was a deal at the time because I just bought my 3080 and then it was like a couple of days later there was a 3090 and it was $300 more. So I paid $1,500 for the 3080 and then the 3090 I paid $1,800. And it was like, okay, well, what should I do? Like, well, maybe I would just get the 3090 anyway, try both of them out, see if I need that 24 gig of RAM. And then if I don't like the 3080, I can always sell it. Although where I am right now, it's hard to sell it. So I knew that when I go back to Australia, I could probably sell it there because it's a bit easier to sell. And then in the meantime, I'd probably just, you know, mine with it. And yeah, I think we'll see about selling it. Like, at the moment, I'm happy to just keep it and mine with it, the 3080. And then the 3090, after using it for 2 months, I think most people, it's probably unnecessary for most people, especially when you have to fork out the $3,000. Matthew says, I got 3090 Founders for £1,400. One of the 3080, but they're selling for $1,000 at retail. Yeah, exactly. So I had the same situation. So it was like, well, which should I buy? You get another 12 gigabytes of RAM. So let's just see how that goes, right? Last Rise says, I got a Strix 3090 for... So we got a bunch of 3090 people here. That's really cool. Like, it's cool to meet, like, people with the 3090. I got a Strix 3090 for $1,910 after shipping. And you know what? That's like a deal now. $1,910 is a deal for a 3090. And that's crazy. That was a Strix as well. You literally paid like MSRP for it. Should repad and repaste for better temps. Yeah, I think all of these cards are different, but people should definitely monitor their card and see how it's going. And you know, I went back to look at some of the comments on my 3090. And by the way, that video, I got a lot of dislikes for me for saying don't buy a 3090. It's really weird. It's like, should I actually just give my actual opinion, or should I sugarcoat stuff? And I think most people, like for me, I don't need to sugarcoat stuff. My audience is hopefully, like me. Like I want my audience to be like me, right? So I don't think I need to sugarcoat stuff. So if they want to dislike that, it's not a big deal for me. Anyway, yeah. So I said don't buy the 39. I still think people should. It's not necessary for people to buy a 3090. I can't think of that many use cases for the 3090 at the moment, like for the money that is going for. Especially like the extra 12 gigabytes of RAM is really unused right now. Okay. Last Rise says, oh, same day as I got my 5950X, I have a PC component addiction. Last Rise, my Strix after repadding it went from 102 degrees on T-junction to 90 degrees while mining. Yep. Hey, Last Rise, what pads did you use? What brand pads? So you can tell everybody like which brand. I used Thermal, right? I thought they were pretty good, but they all have different thermal conductivities on them. Vincent says, my extreme 84 degrees when mining. Matthew Langtree, I added 2 more Noctua case fans. Has exhaust to get my temps down by about 4 degrees. The things that people have to do to like knock like a couple of degrees here and there. And then every degree counts, which tells you that these cards are just ridiculously hot, and they're annoying. I think that's probably I don't know if I should describe it like that, but yeah, the fact that we have to try so many different things to knock a couple of degrees off the cards, it's kind of incredible. Like I didn't think it would ever get to that stage, but here we are. Okay. And also, yeah, I looked at those Noctua fans, but I decided I think they were about $30-40 each for a fan, and then I decided I didn't want to get them. If you want to get some cheap fans, I think you can get some things like if you type in mining fans, they can be really fast. So I got some mining fans and they do like about 2500 RPM. So you could try to put those in your case. Okay. My temp is now around 44 to 46 when mining. Nice. NA says, Jimmy. Hello. Yes, and by the way, most people call me Jimmy, or my friends call me Jimmy, but Jimmy RPG wouldn't make as much sense, which is why we've gone with Jim RPG. But you guys can call me, well, whatever you want to call me. But I just thought I'd let you know that most people call me Jimmy. The Micron RAM so hot. Yeah. I wish it's from Samsung. Yeah, but Samsung don't make the G6X, which I know you know. Last writes Iceberg thermal drift ice on the memory chips and Snowbabe thermal right on the rest of the VRM. Okay, I didn't know anything about those, so that's cool. I'll have to go and have a look at those. Vincent says, I prefer G-Lid than thermal. Yeah, I saw the G-Lid, that the thermal conductivity on those were like 15 watts per Kelvin meter Kelvin. So they're a bit stronger than the thermal right ones. but obviously you just have to get whatever's available. But there wasn't that much that I wanted to say from this Riot blockchain agreement to buy these mining machines from Bitmain. All I really wanted to say was that these companies are really going all in on Bitcoin. And I guess if you bought your GPU and you were wondering how long it was going to be before the next fall of the Bitcoin or the next Bitcoin crash, well, it seems as though that at least these big companies are in it for the long run. And they should be in it for the long run. If you know how the underlying technology works, and you believe in the philosophy of what they're trying to do, the fact that they're trying to decentralize the currency or decentralize the banking system, then the fact that that is opposite to what governments are offering, and also the governments are actually actively trying to get involved in it, tells you that this is the right balance. Like, you got a government currency, a fiat currency that they only themselves control. Then you have this other currency, which if it's decentralized, it's really controlled by all of the nodes on the network, which is me and you. So if you only want a fiat currency, you are literally saying that you only want a government-controlled currency. And look at what's happening with currencies all around the world. Well, what's happening is that all of these governments are just printing off silly amounts of money and devaluing the money. And so this is what's happening. So this is why this technology, or people are getting behind this, because they see that there is a need in the current world for this type of thing. And so we can't just rely on these governments to do whatever we want, right? Like, who's making decisions? It seems like it's just the government's making decisions on stuff. And you have, say, like, for example, the US government, they want to do some programs or whatever, then only the government gets to decide on the program. Well, if you have something like Bitcoin, well, then the Bitcoin, you also have another type of currency where if you don't trust the fiat currency, well, you can go to another type of currency. It's competition, right? That's why if you believe in Bitcoin, you believe in competition. Vincent says, how is your Ventus 3090 now? So Ventus 3090, let me show you. Let's see if I can get it up on the screen. Okay. Here is my 3090. There's my 3090 in there. So it's I just put it in there yesterday. And so this is my 1070, which was in my i5 4690K previously about 3 months ago. And then I bought a 3080. And when I bought my 3080, I wanted to put in my i9 10900K. Because if you go back to my videos, that was my dream machine, to get a i9 10900K or a 5900X and then put a 3080 inside. Because I was pretty much done with my old PC and I needed a new one. So I wanted to build a new system. I was hoping to get a 3080 for what, like $700 or $800 US. So I'm gonna take this photo off there. But yeah, let me just quickly explain. And then after I got my 3080, like 2 days later, the 3090 was on special. So, well, it's not really a special. It was like, okay, felt like a deal. So I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do? Okay, I'll buy the 3090 as well. Because what's the worst that can happen? I'll just sell it for like, $200-$300 less if the Bitcoin tanks. So I got a 3090. And so I got a 3080 and 3090. This one over here is another 3080, which I bought at the same time as that 3080. And then essentially, yeah, they're kind of doing nothing at the moment except like mining at the moment. And it was a mistake to buy a 3080 and a 3090. I mean, obviously, now you look back, well, I got them at a really good price. Like, I got the 3080 for $1,500, which is like about $2,000 to $2,500 right now. But I probably didn't need to get it, because right now I'm very happy with just the 3070. It's so weird. Like, at the time, I would have thought, okay, the 3070 feels a little bit underpowered if I want to keep my system for 5 years. But the 3080 and the 3090 for me is really hot and unnecessary for most people's gaming. Like, I'm sure for my gaming anyway, 90 to 95% of what I need is would be fulfilled by the 3070. But anyway, that's what I've been doing, trying to fix this thing. And yesterday I was trying to get Hive OS. I was trying to get Hive OS going. Oh my goodness. And I had no idea, right? I had no idea how Hive OS works. So I did the image on my disk and I plugged it into the mining machine. And then I just sat there for like 5-10 minutes because I was waiting for something to happen on the screen. I'm like, what's going on? Like, why isn't there anything coming on? Like, I expect it to be like a bit like Windows, where it loads up the windows. And then after about 10 minutes, I'm like, wait, I need to go back and check my other computer, which is this one that's sitting right here. And it was like, oh, right, okay, I get it now. It's a remote. So I just control it remotely. And so you can control Hive OS off the website as long as you link you link it with a configuration file, and then I can just control it using my browser here, and there's an internet connection to the thing. And actually, to do that with a Wi-Fi connection, you have to put the Wi-Fi address, the SSID, and the password number into like a text file, and then it will read that, and then it will log into your Wi-Fi for you. But yeah, I was sitting there for 10 minutes wondering if it was working or not. That's how I guess useless I am in terms of trying to get technology to work. I'm trying to kill all of these ants that somehow crept onto my desk. Hang on. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay. So we're going to take a break while I destroy all these ants, and give me 2 minutes and I'll be back with some more after chat after this. But hold on a minute. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. So I had literally one crumb on the desk, and a whole bunch of ants decided to attack that crumb. I had to get rid of the ants before it got any crazier than that. So, and I think there's a bit of an ant problem in this house. But anyway, uh, so I think that's all the news articles that I had. So this is pretty much just chat time. If you have a question about anything or something you want to talk about, put it in the chat, and we'll spend the next 15-20 minutes having a chat, and then that will be that for this live stream. So let's go back to Reen, and I know you've been waiting for this, but you asked whether I played Warzone, and no, I don't play Warzone, and it's not because I don't like first-person shooters, but I get motion sickness from first-person shooter games, so I don't really play them that much unless like there's a desperate need to like cover it for a video or something like that. So even Cyberpunk 2077, I was in two minds whether to play that, because I knew that I would probably only be able to play like an hour or 2 hours at a time. And in the past, I've actually gotten a little bit better if I play them more regularly, but I just don't play them enough to get that motion sickness out of me. So every time I play a new game, it's like, oh God, I need to rest after like an hour. But I don't play Warzone. It does look pretty cool though, and Call of Duty seems like it's making a big comeback. Is there going to be like a Warzone 2 this year? Is that what's going on? It seems like it's back in a big way, and it's doing, like, you could just look at the Activision shares if you want, like they're just rocketing up. And I had Activision shares for like 2 years. I think I sold them last year. And as soon as I sold them, that's basically when they started going up, which, just shows how much I know about games. But I was like, yeah, Call of Duty is going to go Battle Royale. And I think they said that for like a couple of years, which is why I bought their shares. And it just didn't happen until now. So happens a lot. Happened with Tesla as well. I bought Tesla shares and they only went up a little bit. And then after I sold out of them, they skyrocketed. But I don't know, maybe just a little bit earlier. Got to stick in until like everybody from the main crowd gets in on the mainstream gets into it. Matthew, it is about 300 mega hashes. Yes, it's about 300 at the moment on Hive OS. Though, yeah, so yesterday I couldn't get the stupid thing to work. And I'm talking about the mining rig now. So I got 4 cards, a 1070, a 23080s, and a 3090 in there at the moment. And I was trying to get it to work on Hive OS. And yesterday, before that, it was on NiceHash. And I just added that extra 3080 in there. And then it would recognize the card, but it wouldn't mine with it. So it only mined on the 3080, 3090, and 1070. It didn't mine on that second 3080. It was so weird. I tried everything to get it to mine on NiceHash. Didn't work. So then I decided to put Hive OS on there. And for about an hour, I would say, for about an hour, I couldn't get Hive OS to mine on the cards. And I was about 10 minutes from going home. And all of a sudden, it just started working. So I don't know why. Maybe there's a bit of a delay in the Hive OS software. So then maybe I kept on changing all of the settings, and then that would also change it out, and then that wouldn't work. So I had to wait a little bit before it actually worked, which might be why it started working in the end, because I basically gave up at that point. I said, okay, well, I'll just figure it out today. But yeah, then 10 minutes before I was going to go home, it started working. And maybe that's a Linux thing, because I don't have the most fun with Linux. I don't know what it is, but something about it just feels very like you almost have to have some sort of like computer programming knowledge to like fully embrace the platform on Linux. I don't know if like people feel like that, but I feel like Windows is something like, oh, you grew up with it from the 90s and you kind of get like how Windows 3.1 and Windows 95, you grew up and learned those sort of systems and platforms, and you're like, okay, well, this feels, it's not almost that it feels familiar. Like Linux in some ways feels familiar, but I've always had trouble with like, it almost doesn't give you any type of warnings or anything like that. Well, at least that's how I feel like, because when I had a Raspberry Pi, I still have a Raspberry Pi, but like when I was playing around with it, it was like, I don't know how to get this working. It's like, it doesn't tell you what's wrong. So, but I think maybe that's also to do with the fact that I never took a tutorial or anything like that for Linux, and maybe you really have to use the system. There's also this thing about like permissions and stuff that was kind of tricky to understand. Okay, so I got one EVGA email purchasing 3060 Ti in junk mail, and it's expired ALR. I emailed them and told them it was in junk mail. They let me purchase it by sending new email. Best customer service ever in US. Ah, okay. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's kind of like Amazon, but I've never used Newegg, so I don't really know. But like Amazon's crazy with their customer service, or they used to be anyway. Maybe they're a little bit more strict now, but in the past, if you weren't happy with whatever customer service you got with Amazon, you just quit out of it and then go to a new customer service representative and ask for the same thing, and they'd usually give it to you. So if you wanted a refund and the first person didn't give it to you, you just go to the second one and they'd give it to you. But yeah, you shouldn't abuse that, because then it'll probably get listed on your account. But yeah, there are a few things which were crazy. Like, so for the GTX 970 at Amazon, in terms of customer service, everyone was saying at the time, hey, just go back to Amazon and complain about it, that they sold you a 4GB card, or the marketing was 4GB, but you only got 3.5 gigabytes on your card. And there are a lot of people around in the forum who said, yeah, it worked for me, so I decided to try it. I think I got like $50 off or something like that. And then I got another like $30 off for like it getting delayed to where it was shipping. And then also later on, Nvidia also gave another $30 on top, because it was part of that class action lawsuit. So I ended up getting like $100 off. And I think I bought it for $329, so it would have been like $229 for a 970. And I still have that. I gave it away though, to my brother. But yeah, the 970 for $329 was the best deal. Matthew says, I think some people get motion sickness with VR. Yeah, I'm the same. I get motion sickness there. But I think mostly to do with the fact that everything's in first person and I'm sitting down. And also it depends on the game. It's so weird, right? Like, I don't know if you guys have VR. I got the Oculus Rift S, and I'm pretty much going to sell it. So I haven't used it in about a year. But I played Dirt Rally with it. Oh my goodness. Like, it all depends on the game and how they, how it looks in the game. Because in Dirt Rally, I got sick within like 2 minutes. And there are a lot of other games where I can go on for like half an hour before I get kind of a bit queasy. Maybe it's because it's too hot, or I'm just kind of sick of like, that viewpoint. But anyway, the Dirt Rally, you're driving, right? Because it's a rally game, and there are a lot of bumps. So you're driving, and then you hit a bump, and your car flies up, and you instantly feel that sort of levitation, but you're still sitting down in the seat. So then your brain all messed up, because your brain's supposed to like lift off with the car, but you're still sitting on the seat. And after a couple of those jumps, I was like, okay, I've had enough of this. Like, I'm getting sick already. It's almost that type of sickness from, say, like when you're in the plane and the plane goes up or down, like from the turbulence. Vincent says, what the hell, there's one guy using Stellar IO, purchased 15 3070 tough at 8:18 p.m. Is that like some sort of like scalper bot thing, Stellar IO? Because I haven't heard of that. Let's have a look at Stellar IO. Must be like one of those shoe things. Oh, it's a bot. Is that what it is? But the 3070 is the best card to get. That or the 3060 Ti. It's if you get a 3090, I mean, they're the same, right? Like if you get a 30, it's all based on return on investment. So if you get a 3090 for 3,000, it's the same as getting a 3070 for 1,500. And that also means like the 3080 is a bit overpriced at 2,500 at the moment. Oh yeah, it's the same as Bouncer Alert. But that's why like a 3070 for most people like is that 30% performance that you get going from the 3070 to the 3090. You don't really see it much in games. So for me, it's like it's not really worth paying for that $1,500, and you're going to make the same amount return on investment if you buy a 3070 anyway to a 3090. If you're just talking about getting your money back, like if you're talking about making money, well, nobody can really say for sure how long it's going to last anyway. Like we don't know if it's going to last 5 years. So in terms of like being able to mine with it, especially with Ethereum coming up to 2.0, then like we have no idea. So I think the best thing is really to say like, well, when are you going to get your money back? Because that's the first thing you should do, is look after your capital. So Matthew, I heard of simple mining, but I've never used it, and that's really interesting. Like I'm gonna have to have a look at that. But the only thing that, because yesterday when I was trying to put Hive OS on, I was like, okay, I got to get this mining before I get home. I had like an hour or 2 hours to set it all up, so I didn't really look at what other options were out there. So I just went Hive because I'd been looking at that for a little bit. But I think I'll have to have a look at this simple mining thing. So what are the advantages to like simple mining and Hive OS? Have you used Hive before? It looks quite similar to Hive. Simple Mining OS is easy to use, plug-and-play Linux mining OS, platform for cryptocurrency, GPU mining. Our mining OS supports all modern NVIDIA and AMD GPUs, and besides ETH-hash, many other algos. Deployment, monitoring, and maintenance of your GPU rig farm were never easier. No more configuring Windows OS, installing graphics drivers, and looking for miner software. Just download our OS image, flash it to empty 7+ gig pen drive, and boot it. Add rigs to your account and start managing all your rigs from Cloud GUI dashboard. It looks really similar to Hive. I think it'd be really cool to like try this out. Oh, I see. So you have to pay for this. But why do you have to pay for this and not Hive OS? Because Hive OS, you can have one rig on there and it's free. And you don't have to even go on their Hive mining pool. You could do any mining pool and it's free for one rig. But then if you have more than one, then you have to start paying them. And I think it's like $3 a rig. So I guess this is a little bit cheaper. You have more than one rig. Yep. Yeah, I started with NiceHash on Windows as well. So I have got 3 PCs, and they're all mining at the moment, and they're on nice hash. And then I've also got that mining rig that I just showed you. And I guess that's where I'm just going to plonk my spare GPUs, I guess. I feel like nice hash is fine because if you just have a PC, well, it's almost impossible to like switch into Linux anyways. So there's no other way that you can mine on a Windows PC, especially if you're going to be gaming and getting your money back. So I think it's okay to use nice hash, even though, you know, a lot of the big YouTubers, they prefer not to mine in Windows. I think mostly for security reasons. Vincent, I see a lot of YouTubers, they put NVIDIA and AMD cards in the same rig. So, and then when I used Hive OS yesterday, it seemed very easy. Like the driver's already there. I didn't have to install any new drivers. It already decides on the drivers. You can switch it out to the driver that you want to switch it to, but you have to type in some sort of like command line to get it to download, say, if you want the 4070.05 driver for the RTX 3060, then you have to go and download that yourself. You put that in a command prompt, but I don't think that would be too hard to do. It would just be like just the one line where it gets it to download that driver. So you could definitely do it. But yeah, if you were just to have NVIDIA cards and AMD cards, all you have to do is just put them in the same system and it will sort it out. Like, you don't really have to do anything. You can write rules where you can have all your NVIDIA cards only mine this this miner, and you can have your AMD cards mine another miner. So you could have your NVIDIA cards mine T-Rex, and then you could have your AMD cards mine something else. But yeah, you wouldn't be able to do it on Windows. I think in Windows, it confuses Windows when you have both the AMD drivers and the NVIDIA drivers, but on Linux you can have both running at the same time with different cards. That's why people use Hive OS first. But even in Windows, I don't think many people would have an AMD card in one slot and an NVIDIA card in one slot, so it's not really that big of an issue in Windows. But if you have more cards, like if you suddenly have, don't be afraid that like you have to collect all of the NVIDIA cards, or you have to collect only AMD cards, or you have one rig for NVIDIA, one rig for, you can just mix and match them. But I have not tested it. I have seen like all of these YouTube videos on there that do it, so it looks like it's definitely possible and shouldn't be that complicated to do. So that seems like all of the questions in the chat at the moment were up to date. So we might just go for another 5 minutes, see if there's any other questions or anybody else coming in and say hello. But other than that, that's probably going to be it for this show once again. So thank you for everyone who stayed and watched the show. And we'll try and get more videos out this week. This week I was super busy with my own personal work, as I said at the top of the show. But I think there shouldn't be as much work this week, and I literally didn't have a single second for anything else other than my work. But hopefully we can make a couple of videos this week, and then next week it should be the 1 year anniversary of this channel. Obviously nobody watched this channel when it started, which is how all channels are, but we can celebrate it, or I can celebrate it anyway. And I guess we can talk about like how this channel has gone so far and where it's going. I think that would be interesting to talk about. and what we're trying to achieve here with this channel. Matthew, thanks for watching again, and thanks for joining in the chat. And that's what I love about these live streams, is like you guys getting in the chat and talking, and I try to answer as many of those questions and comments in the chat as I can. But we'll probably leave it there. Thank you everyone for watching this live stream, and we'll see you during the week if I put out videos and stuff. Until then, it's bye for now. Thank you for watching.